Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Ace Advice. Today, I am interviewing an Amherst College alum, Julie Atkinson. She is the class of 95, and she majored in English and political science, and she played on both the tennis and squash teams. Right now, she is the Chief Marketing Officer at Chopped Creative Salad Company, and I'm just going to read a little bit about that. Aiming to change the future of fast food, Chopped pushes the boundaries of what a salad can be with its core menu of 14 classics, 3 rotating seasonal specials, 25 homemade small batch dressings, and a limited time only super seasonals that features legal produce only at its peak. And it originally started in New York City, and now they have locations in Washington, D.C., Virginia, Connecticut, suburban Westchester, New York, suburban Maryland, and North Carolina. So it's become such a big company. And yeah, she's the chief marketing officer for them. So I'm really excited to talk to her about her time at Amherst, why she chose Amherst, and how Amherst has helped her in her career. Hi, Julie. How are you?
I watched your Amherst women's tennis takeover yesterday too, so I was excited to get a preview.
Oh, good. Well, thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. I'm thrilled.
So I just have like a few questions and we could kind of just make it discussion based, but awesome. All
Great.
right. So my first question is just what your background is in tennis, why you started to play.
Yeah, I mean, I started playing tennis, I think, really late in life, probably 13-ish, which is late these days, especially to start competing. And, I really loved the thrill of competition. I loved being out there. I loved, and this is, not necessarily healthy, but I loved tracking statistics and rankings and obsessing about sort of growth in those areas. Uh, and I love the exercise. And I liked having the structure to my day. I remember even during college, when we would be in off season, I wouldn't even find myself doing as well academically because I liked the structure that tennis sort of offered to my days.
Oh, that's really interesting. So was it like a family thing? Did people in your family play tennis or was it kind of your own idea to start playing tennis?
Yeah, my dad took up tennis very late in life, so was a recreational tennis player at best. But my brother also played tennis for a little while on the Amherst men's tennis team. So it became a family thing. Once I started playing, he got into it as well.
Awesome. And when you started playing 13, 14, when were you like, I want to play in college, and what kind of made you look at like Amherst as a school?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think like the, sort of because I started so much later, I don't think I ever thought I'd be able to play in college. And then, I had one or two breakout years, which my son plays tennis competitively. And I always say, you sort of need one or two breakout years. And then I started looking, the schools started soliciting and calling me, which was a much different process back then than it is today. And I was looking at, I think, Columbia, Penn, and Amherst. And I just really had a good feeling about Amherst. I thought it was the right mix of academics and athletics for me. Um, at the time, it was Peter and a little bit of Jackie. So it's crazy that it's still some of the same people that are there today, especially Jackie. She was my coach all 4 years.
Wow.
Um, yeah, which is great. And so, yeah, I mean, I think Amherst, I have such fond memories of playing tennis in college, actually much fonder memories of playing on the junior circuit and sort of doing all the USTA tournaments. I loved college tennis, but I found the USTA tennis tournaments very stressful.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that college tennis is so much more fun. I mean, it's just like kind of the team environment also
Yeah.
is really nice compared to junior tennis, where you're just like playing for yourself pretty much and it's competitive. So maybe you can just dive a little bit deeper on your Amherst College experience, and also just like how the team did while you were there in general, like results wise.
Yeah, so my experience playing tennis was incredible. I think being a college athlete, especially at a school like Amherst, is really gratifying, and it's just really rewarding. And the team did incredibly well. Now, what's interesting is when I got there, Amherst athletes were not allowed to participate nationally. I'm not sure if Jackie mentioned that because of the academic rigor. going to the nationals, especially for both individual and team, took so much time away from getting ready for finals, et cetera. So we had to petition my first year our teachers to be able to even allowed to participate in the nationals. So the school had
Wow.
never ever won a national champion, brought any singles or doubles players to national competition. So we went to all of our teachers, and most were certainly willing and wanted to give it a try, but it was it definitely took a lot of convincing to say we want to be. Williams at the time was allowed to go to the nationals, but Amherst athletes were not. And so we finally overcame that battle. But I remember that first year we had never been to a national championship, and I think the team did really well. I think we came in 5th while I was there. We never won, but we were always sort of top. And I remember myself having one great year my junior year, and then I was slated to go to the nationals. I think I was even seated first at the nationals, and I got mono right before the nationals, so couldn't
Wow.
make it. So that that was devastating. And it's funny because the memory still is real.
Right.
But the team did incredibly. We had some great doubles players. Jackie was an amazing coach. We loved to travel, the team, and so just being able to fly somewhere. And I think they were at Kalamazoo. I can't even remember where the nationals were now, but it really felt incredible to just have that experience, and that first time that Amherst was able to compete at that level.
Yeah, that's so cool that you were a part of the first kind of national experience for the
Yeah,
tennis team.
yeah.
I also saw on the alumni directory that you played squash as well.
Oh yeah, I did. You know what? And this is what's so amazing about the difference between today and 20 some odd years ago, I won't even mention, is that back then I remember Jackie, came to me and she was like, listen, we need additional squash players. You're a good athlete. You have obviously a lot. I had never picked up a squash racket.
Wow.
Yeah. But it was great. Jackie was the coach of that as well. So of course, then, she was the tennis coach. So I did that for 2 seasons and loved it. It became a lot by like my junior year. I think it was starting to impinge on my social life, to be quite honest, to play all 3 seasons competitively. And so, I think I only did that for a season or 2, but really loved it. And squash is something I still, sort of play a little bit of now. But it was really Jackie who said, we could use some additional talents. Can you give it a try? And I was thrilled.
Yeah. So how is kind of can you kind of explain some differences between squash and tennis, whether it's just like aspects of the game or like mental toughness or just like team dynamics? Were there kind of like specific differences that you could kind of tell between tennis and squash?
Yeah, one of the fears for everybody is that your swing will change once you play squash because it's much more slice, shorter backswing, and your footwork is totally different. So I'll never forget, I was playing tennis 4 or 5 hours a day, whatever it was, in sort of preseason training all summer. I'd coach tennis, and then I'd get to the winter and I'd go play, a match of squash, and I couldn't move. But I had been playing sometimes I'm sure you do this today, but we would play sometimes 4 matches a day in the New England or in the tournament. So if you kept moving on, you'd play 2 singles, 2 doubles. I mean, I would play for hours, but I'd get on the squash court and I'd come off like sort of a grueling match. I couldn't move my body. I mean, it was so exhausting. So it's a huge difference in just the stop start motion. I mean, people think it's a smaller court, but I almost think it's harder. In just the movement, you can't blast the ball and the point is over, which you can do in tennis, depending on
Yeah.
your style. Um, so that I would say is the main difference. The great team camaraderie was the same with both teams. I mean, I loved the squash players. Some of them were amazing. I was, just a beginner. But I would say I loved the team, and all of my close friends at Amherst all played on the sports teams and all felt the same. That the school did an incredible job and these teams did an incredible job of creating such a strong bond. And some of my closest friends today are still, sort of my tennis teammates.
That's awesome to hear. And I was also very curious. You mentioned Williams, and obviously the Amherst Williams rivalry is pretty epic. I mean, my sister goes to Williams, so it's
Oh,
really
no
funny, kind of.
way. Did she
Yeah,
play tennis there?
she played on the varsity team for about a year, and now she's like the head of the club tennis. So she kind
Okay,
of transitioned over.
got it.
Um, Yeah, but just kind of that rivalry is like super intense and like I feel it in my own family even. And I was wondering kind of what team was kind of your biggest rival back then? Was it also Williams?
It was definitely Williams. Still, the exact. I think the exact same dynamics live today. And we during my time there split all every year. They would win one, we would win one. Some years we were a little better, some years they were a little better. But that was, without a doubt, our biggest rivalry back then. But it's interesting because back then, we would go and play UMass a couple times a year just for practice. I mean, I think it was sort of different schedules, but that was great as well. We play UConn. I don't know if that still exists.
Yeah,
Those kind
no,
of teams were so different back then.
right. Right. Yeah, right now it's just mainly the D3 schools. We don't play UMass or UConn anymore.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and I don't know if those were part of our regularly scheduled matches or just ways to get great competition, but they were
Right.
great competition, and we all really liked doing that, going over to UMass, playing a couple matches a year. And so that was great. I went to tennis camp every summer of my life at Williams. So when it came time for picking a college, I had already spent probably 7 summers in a row in Williamstown. And I thought I got to try a different small town.
I love that. Yeah, that's so funny. Um, I was also wondering maybe if you can talk about the fall versus spring seasons because you talked about how tennis had 2 seasons back then also. And for us, it's in the fall, it's tournament based, and then in the spring, it's you play just against one specific team. Was it the same back then also?
It was the same, but same thing. When our freshman class got there, they didn't have a fall season. And so
Oh, wow.
lobbied for that as well, or Jackie lobbied for that. I think the team was a little bit like, yeah, I wouldn't mind 2 seasons off,
Right.
but we started that when I got there because we noticed I think we had a couple strong recruiting classes, and we thought, let's sort of make this a much more competitive feature or aspect of the team dynamic. And so we started that when I got there. So the fall season, the first time we did that, I believe was my freshman or sophomore. I think it was my freshman year where we entered all of those tournaments. We would play a couple of matches, sort of nearby as well. And that's maybe more when we did the sort of UConn, UMass, close D1 schools, Colgate, etc. But yeah, I mean, the fall, I loved the fall. I mean, I ended up loving the fall just because I love the dynamics of the tournaments. We went up to Middlebury every year. That was a pleasure. I'm sure it's the same tournaments that existed 25 years ago.
Yeah, that's so funny you mentioned Middlebury because this past fall we drove to Middlebury so many times. Like I think I lost count. Like that was the like we had so many road trips there. I think there was
Yeah.
a lot of like ITAs there, and I
Yeah,
think a
yeah.
NESCAC
That's a
tournament
hard
was there.
drive also. So what I remember about that Middlebury drive is that, in inclement weather, you really don't want to be driving up to Middlebury.
No, you don't exactly. I was also wondering because you majored in English and political science, and I was wondering maybe you could talk about why you chose those majors.
Yeah, I mean, I had a very strong liberal arts background while I was at Amherst. I did a lot of women's studies. Yeah, political science, English. I really, sort of, it was my primary focus. And I just really like the professors. I think that's why. I was
Yeah.
never like a super strong math science person. And so, Amherst spoke to me in its very limited / non-existent core requirements. And I think what was great is I really was close to a couple professors, and they sort of really influenced my decision making on majors. And I mean, an English major even today, I am in the field of marketing, and I will tell you, for my own, I have 3 kids of my own. That feels like one of the most important things you can do. That liberal arts English major is so critical just in public speaking, in writing emails, in thought process around business making decisions. And so it's really helped me even 25 years later.
Yeah, that's so interesting you bring that up because I was going to ask you how what you learned at Amherst has helped you in your career. So I guess maybe we can go into that. So you're the chief marketing officer for Chopped Creative Salad Company, right? I was wondering maybe you can just talk a little bit about what you do.
Yeah, sure. So, yes, I run marketing and digital for a couple of restaurant concepts. Chopped is one of them. Another one is called Dos Toros Taqueria, but it's we have sort of an overarching or not we, but there's an overarching company that owns it's about 100 restaurants.
Wow.
throughout the US. And I run all of the marketing and digital. So we build out the digital assets like their websites, their mobile apps, their ordering platforms. One thing that's super hot right now in fast casual restaurants is curbside pickup, given the pandemic.
Right.
And so, we build all of that. My team builds all that. And then we also develop all of the marketing, all of the in-store marketing collateral, the social media is all of sort of our team, the emails, the any promotion you can think of falls in the marketing. But what I would say is what I learned at Amherst is how to speak. Hopefully this sounds articulate, somewhat articulately, and how to write articulately. And that has helped me. Before this, I ran digital and marketing for Tory Burch. And before that, I was at Starwood Hotels. So I've had the same career path for the past 9 or 10 years. And I think in all of those jobs, being able to, formulate articulate thoughts is the most important thing you can do. And so Amherst was the foundation for that.
Yeah, no, I love to hear that because I think marketing is super interesting. I'm a history major, so I'm
Hmm.
super interested in like, yeah, like the writing. And I think understanding how to be able to speak about those ideas and be able to articulate what you want to say is like super important. And I love that about just all liberal arts colleges, the way that they teach you how to do that. So that's really
Yeah.
good to hear that like these skills that I'm developing in college will help me, in my future career.
I hope so. I didn't even have a strong English background in high school. So it was really just Amherst College for me. Uh,
Right.
that taught me some of these skills. So I'm so grateful. I had an incredible experience.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And you talked a little bit about like more curbside pickups now. How else how have you had to adapt due to the pandemic to make sure that you still are able to market your products out there despite I'm not really sure how like these companies are doing right now in the pandemic. I feel like some companies are not doing well at all and some are doing really well,
Yeah.
just based off of just the way that we're run more digitally these days and like, yeah,
Right.
like delivery and things like that. So I was wondering how you've had to kind of adjust what you do because of the pandemic.
Yeah, I mean, everything has changed. So all of our orders for 4 months were digital only. So you couldn't walk into a
Wow.
store and order. You could only order off of all of our digital applications. And so how we talk to customers had to change quite dramatically. I mean, we
Right.
had to educate on how to use our digital applications. Not everyone, I mean, my parents, for example, they don't want to order off an app still. So they used to go to Chopped in their town in Long Island, every couple days, and they're petrified to download the app and order that way. And so we had to develop a number of new functionalities, like a QR code functionality, which presumably you've seen, which is if you walk up with your phone and the camera open, then you can download our menu much more quickly if you're not as comfortable using an app. So we developed a lot of those technologies. And the truth is, Chopped in every market but New York City is doing incredibly well, and Dos Toro and the Mexican
Right.
concept doing
Right.
really well. But in New York City, where people haven't yet returned to work and we were really sort of their lunchtime option, we're not doing as well, nor is any restaurant in Manhattan. And so I would say it's a tale of two companies almost, which is we have a restaurant in Greenwich, Connecticut, where I live, and they're crushing it. They're probably doing better than pre-pandemic. But in New York City, some of our restaurants still aren't even open because there are so few people living and working in Manhattan right now.
Right. That's super interesting to hear about kind of the differences in location really can affect the success of, the company. And that's interesting. You also live in Greenwich. I live in Westport,
Oh, how
which is really
funny.
close. Yeah.
Yeah.
I moved to Westport with my family, I think about a year and a half ago now. So we're pretty new to the area.
So
I'm
from where?
Arizona, actually.
Oh my God. Wow, how interesting.
Yeah, it was a big move, but I think we kind of decided that since my sister and I are both at Amherst and Williams, my parents kind of want to come along so we don't have to like travel so far across the country. And
Yeah.
I grew up in Arizona my whole life, and I just wanted to live in the East Coast also.
Yeah.
Also,
Any other siblings or just you two?
it's just my sister and I.
Now, do your parents, are they able to go to a lot of your matches?
Yeah, so the problem is that last year, for the first half of the year, they were still in Arizona, so they
Oh,
couldn't. But then in the spring, they could have, but
yeah.
we were in the process of moving, so they didn't have time
Uh,
to come to my matches. And then this year, there wasn't a season, so
right.
yeah, it's tough. But hopefully, either this spring maybe, or senior year, my parents will, they say they're going to come to like all my matches.
That's great.
So we
My
do.
parents similarly were at almost all my matches.
Yeah.
They came all the time.
Yeah, no, it's really fun to get the support. I mean, tennis it's a lot different than like basketball or football where like a lot of people come out and support. Um, but I love when like the parents come out and then the parents bring, their friends, and it's just like it's just really fun to get the support because like you said, like it's a lot different than junior tennis. Like in junior tennis it really was just like you and your parents and that's it. Like no other parents were cheering you on. Like I love having my friends' parents cheering me on too. It's just
Yeah,
like it's
yeah.
kind of like a community.
That's very true. And actually, you're catching me on, I was in a junior USTA tournament the last 2 days in, way out in Long Island with my son. And this discussion is even reminding me of how, much more rewarding it is to play, on a great team and have the camaraderie.
Yeah, so how old is your son? Is he kind of already in the college search?
No, so he's going to be a sophomore, so a little
Okay,
early. We have three
right.
kids, 15, 13, and 9.
Awesome. Okay, okay. Well, are you gonna try to get him to go to Amherst?
I don't know. I have no idea what he'll want to do. And it's just things are so different now. When we played junior tennis, there was no UTRs. They weren't re-ranking everyone digitally every other day. And so um, I have no idea if that's the kind of, we're still sort of figuring out what his desires will be in the college process. I'm sure he'd love Amherst like everyone does, though.
Right. Yeah. I was also wondering if you can maybe give some advice to people who are about to go into college, or just like are having trouble like time managing right now in college. Like, if you have any advice you would give to your younger self in college, that you think would help you have had like a easier time in college, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I always found my best effort to be when I was in season. I found, out of season, I had a lot of trouble managing the hours of the day. And sometimes I just had too much free time and then would wait till the very last minute to complete papers, study for exams, whatever it was, probably like many college kids. I would certainly advise against doing that. But what I will also say is that's sort of a rite of passage. Figuring out on your own that that's not always the best course of action is one of the only ways to learn, because I tell my own kids all the time that is not the right way to study or to prepare or to get papers done. And sometimes you just have to fail a couple times before you can recognize that it's advantageous to start a couple days earlier.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. I think the same exact thing. I remember I was given warnings going into college, like you're gonna have to learn how to, have great time
Yeah,
management skills, learn when to say no if you need to like focus on your studies, things like that. But at the end of the day, when you're actually in college, it's so hard to say no. It's so hard to like
I
make
know.
sure that you put time aside to study. And so I definitely learned lessons the hard way, but at the same at the same time, like what you're saying, you kind of have to learn it the hard way in order to like fully
Exactly.
learn.
Right. I mean, teenagers, early 20s, you got to learn, sort of what works best for you. I think Amherst does a really good job, though, of helping people through that sort of time management, executive functioning process, and knowing when it's right to put on the brakes and say, now I got to buckle down.
Right. Exactly. So I guess I have one last question for you. It's just kind of a curiosity question. I was wondering who your favorite tennis players are and like who you kind of emulated your style of play when you're younger.
God, I loved Andre Agassi when I was younger. And have you ever read that book?
My parents have, and we have it in the house. I haven't read it yet though.
Yeah, so I just had my son read it as well. It's fascinating about his own love-hate relationship with tennis and how, because those guys didn't ever get to go to college like you and I did. They just
Right.
went on the junior tour. I don't know when Andre Agassi did, probably when he was 12. Who knows?
Right.
And so but I loved him. I mean, I loved Steffi Graf, a lot of, but currently, and by the way, the tennis is on basically 24/7 in our house right now. I'm so
Oh,
thankful
same.
that they are filming the US Open. I would have died without it. I loved the Southern Western
Same.
Open. We watched every minute. I love Osaka. I love Sloane Stephens, and I like the path she's been through, which is very up and down. I mean, she won the US Open and then sort of dropped off the face of the earth for a while. And now she seems like, did she win last night? I'm not even sure.
I think she did. I think she
Okay,
did.
yeah.
I actually, yeah, I won't look. I have like all the draws next to me. I'm like very into the tennis thing also.
Same. And so yeah, I like the path that she's been on and that it's been a challenge. I like Coco as well. The one thing I would say is she's very young, and that's very difficult to maintain that level for all those years is truly trying. And so I hope she can do it.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned Coco because one thing that I did like a little preview video of the US Open before it started, and one thing is that I thought that Coco, if there was an audience, could go so far. But I
Yeah.
think right now because she's young, she needs the audience support, but because right now there isn't one, I predicted like I did the whole draw prediction and I predicted she would lose in the first round and
Wow.
I was right, but I was kind of like happy that I was right about that because it's like,
Right,
oh, that's
right,
so cool.
right.
Like I know her kind of like and how she would
Yeah,
do well. So I mean, I'm hoping that she can still win some matches despite not really having audiences right now. But
yeah,
I know that once audiences do come back, I think she's going to go back to her like full form and competing like and winning all those
yeah,
matches.
yeah. Yeah, no, she definitely draws energy from an audience, as many
Yeah.
of these players do. But yeah, I mean, I think for Coco, some wins, some losses is probably the right model as well to get to the place she needs to be to compete effectively when she's 19.
Yeah, exactly. It kind of reminds me of Ostapenko. I think she won
Yeah,
when
yeah,
she was like 17, I think, or
yeah,
19. I'm not sure, but very
yeah,
young.
yeah.
And I haven't really heard from her since.
No, no. She was in the qualifiers this year, I believe. And I
Wow.
don't know if I can't, I mean, you'd know better with the draws, but I saw her play a match like a week or two, which I think was the qualies to the Western Southern Open potentially. So you're right. I mean,
Wow.
she similarly somewhat burned out. I mean, there's a risk of that in every sport, but I think the individual sports, it's even more pronounced.
Exactly. Yeah, I totally agree with that. You answered all my questions, and it was so lovely to talk to you.
Same.
You're my first alum that I've talked to from Amherst
Great.
on this channel, and I've learned so much. I think it's so cool that your team was kind of the team of many firsts, I guess,
Yeah, yeah.
which is super cool. And you've kind of modeled how my team is now with all the nationals and stuff. So that's awesome.
Yeah. Well, good luck to you guys. And it's been an absolute pleasure. Will you say hi to Jackie for me?
Oh, I will.
Have a great day and good luck with everything.
Thank you. You too.
All right. Bye bye.
It was such a pleasure talking to Julie. I hope you guys enjoyed that conversation. Please don't forget to like this video and subscribe, and I'll see you guys soon.